I'd like to share with you what I shared with Cheyenne Christian Fellowship this past Sunday. It's about Alcoholics Anonymous. They have a principle. They say honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, how it works. And I'd like to adapt that to church principles. I have been involved in Alcoholics Anonymous for 43 years and 8 days. What I love about AA is when somebody is hurting or suffering in some way, they can raise their hand and they are given the amount of time they need to take the garbage out. That's the things that go on in your head and your heart as you're trying to figure out your sanctification. Sometimes that's all they have to give. By listening to that person, you're helping them. Sudden conversions is what a lot of the churches rely on. They figure you come in, boop, hippity beep pow, you're healed. But that's not a reality. There are people that are coming in, they're scarred, marred, and they need time to process things. Sudden conversions do happen. But in my case, I was witness to by about 3,000 people throughout my lifetime. And each time they talked to me, I reacted, and I reacted with anger. It wasn't until I had to face myself, I was in prison and I couldn't run, that I could see the need for Christ in my life because I had become broken. The number one thing I want to talk about with Alcoholics Anonymous is they say, bring the body and your mind will follow. Now, to change somebody's behavior, you first must allow them to sort out all the wrong things in their heart and in their mind. Remember that we're living in a fallen world. If you have no concept of a kingdom, you can't think yourself into the kingdom. You have to act your way through it. And that's what they mean by bring the body and the mind will follow. What principle I get out of the Bible for this is James 1:22. Do not merely listen to the words and so deceive yourself. Do what it says. Number two concept is service, commitment. When I joined Alcoholics Anonymous, everybody drank coffee and smoked cigarettes. Somebody had to make the coffee and clean the ashtrays or clean the room up. Become active in service towards others. Where I find that in the Bible is John 13:4. He rose after supper. He laid aside his garment. He took a towel and girded himself. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and wipe them with the towel which he was girded. Jesus is our ultimate guide to service work to other people. Become active. Number three principle. You have to give it away to keep it. This is what Alcoholics Anonymous taught me. When you reach out to those who are still suffering, you ensure that you keep yourself from suffering by giving back. You have to give it away to keep it. My principle is become a wholesale seed dealer, spreading the gospel everywhere you go. Actions are good, but you also need to engage in conversation. Remember, people are watching for inconsistencies in our life. And my thing that I'm saying here is allow them to see the faults and then engage them in conversation about it. I don't know how many of you have done something and you heard, you Christians. Well, a lot of times people are looking for something to discount you and not to listen to you. But if you get upset and tight and you don't talk about it, nothing's been done. Remember that Jesus came for the sick because they needed a doctor. Allow the doctor to heal you through humility. Become transparent, even with the people that you're working with in the streets. Let them see what's going on in your life. Become vulnerable and remain teachable. Where I get that from in the Bible is 1 Corinthians. And I'm going to spin down. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded accordingly for their own labor. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. And what I'm trying to get at here is if we had a church where if something was going on in my life and I raised my hand and I said, look, I'm struggling with this sin, and I don't know what to do with it. What would happen in your church? Would people look at you and say, okay? In Alcoholics Anonymous, if I raise my hand and I let the darkest thing going on in my heart out, people clap for me and tell me to keep coming back. And through that kind of principle, you start to work out these problems. What I suggest is we have a church where people can come in and say, I'm struggling with this sin terribly. I need help. And people clap for me and tell me to keep coming back. Instead, I think, well, a lot of times what we fear and what happens is people look at you like, oh my God, how'd he do that? Ugh. And they get all twisted behind it. Or they tell you, just tell one person. Well, if I'm honest with the entire church, honesty, and if you were open-minded, this is how it might work. If I'm honest about it and I get you to be a participant in what's going on in my life, I think sometimes that heals us. It has for me. And I love the body of Christ. Thank you very much. Let me know what you think about this.